Mr. Jim Allister.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This is something of a sham debate, because we're debating regulations made by an executive when that executive collectively does not believe in regulations in some respects. And the sham is further underscored by the fact that this debate will be responded to on behalf of the executive by Junior Minister Kearney, who last Tuesday, when he last debated these matters, when he ought to have been here to move or to answer, chose instead to himself breach the regulations by attending a funeral of a person of whom he was neither a household member nor a relative, when the regulations were abundantly clear in Regulation 52G that no person who was not of the same household or a relative should be attending any funeral. Deputy Minister Kearney, with his cohorts, decided that law wasn't for him. And yet today, in the display of incredible hypocrisy, this House will be treated to a junior minister responding to this debate in respect of regulations which he himself does not honour. How low can this place sink? That's why I said it is a sham. A fundamental of the contract between government and the governed is that the government that makes the laws keeps the laws before they expect the people, for whom they are also made, to keep them. And yet here we have a situation where we have ministers in this executive who sit round the executive table making these laws. Then, when the opportunity requires it, flagrantly breach them. Where is the loyalty? Where is the collective responsibility? Of course, the answer is that there is a greater loyalty when it comes to Sinn Fein members of this executive. The greater loyalty is not to the executive or to any system of government. The greater loyalty is the fidelity to the Republican movement, to show homage to the gruesome heroes of that movement. That's the greater loyalty that trumps obeying their own laws. And that's what we saw last Tuesday. We saw ministers openly, unapologetically, demanding of everyone else loyalty to law, but themselves setting themselves above the law. These are ministers who took a pledge of office which included an obligation to support the rule of law unequivocally in word and deed. Unequivocally in word and deed. Last Tuesday, we saw the deeds in flagrant breach of the very rule of law that applied at that time to funerals. And why was that? I'll say it again. They told us no exemptions, except when fidelity to the Republican cause demands homage to people such as Mr. Storey. Then that trumps everything. That's what we saw last And unequivocally in word, well, of course, we then, in addition to the sham situation of this debate, had the sham apology. We had Michelle O'Neill, effectively joint First Minister in this part of the United Kingdom, saying, I'm sorry if people were hurt, but I didn't cause it. What a sham of an apology. And then, of course, lest anyone is in any doubt, she copper fastens it by saying, and I will never apologise. So much for saying sorry about anything, when you immediately take any shred of contrition, which there was none to start with, and underscore it by saying, I will never apologise for attending the funeral of a friend. And what was she saying? She was saying, whatever about my pledge of office, whatever about unequivocally by word and deed supporting the rule of law, there is a greater loyalty that she has. That is to the Republican movement. That is the Achilles heel. In fact, it's far more of this executive and this assembly. We're now in a situation where the credibility has been shredded by itself, by an integral part of the executive. And all the executive parties can say is, we're very disappointed. That's what they're going to tell us tomorrow in a motion. We're very disappointed. No condemnation, no demand for resignations. Isn't it disappointing? How pathetic. And then, today, no doubt, we'll be treated in the wind-up to a recitation of all sorts of weasel words. But the reality remains. This is an executive populated on the Sinn Fein side by ministers who believe themselves to be above the law, the very law they seek, they make. I can't imagine a more shattering position for any government to be in than those who make its laws, then set themselves up above those laws. And then come to this House with the pretense that they need to have this House approve regulations, which when it suits, some will not even obey. What a sham, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker. The other junior minister, Mr. Lyons, told us that about other amendments that have since been made. One of them is Amendment 9. Amendment 9 was made at 9:30 on Monday evening last. What did Amendment 9 do? It allowed, instead of 10, 30 people to participate in an outside gathering. When did it come into effect? Well, you might have thought it could have been laid in this House before it came into effect. Oh no, it came into effect 90 minutes later, at 11 o'clock last Monday night, before it was even laid in this House. Never mind debate it. Why was that? Well, maybe we have the answer in the utterly bogus excuse proffered by Sinn Fein as to their justification for being at this funeral. when they sought to self-isolate the cortege from the funeral, when they sought to suggest the cortege was only 30, even though they'd elbowed family members out of it so as they could be there themselves to keep it at 30. The cortege was only 30, therefore they didn't break the law. Utterly bogus, totally spurious. Regulation 5.2g is emphatic in its terms. But is that why Amendment 9 was made at great haste and published at great haste late into last Monday evening so as to provide a fig leaf to Sinn Fein? Were the DUP complicit in that? Did they not see what was happening? That the very next day, a gruesome hero of republicanism was to be buried? Did they fall blindly, or not so blindly, into the trap of providing a fig leaf for Sinn Fein? Even though that's all it is. It's utterly bogus. It does not exculpate them from the breach of the law. I think the public who have been watching on in amazement will want to know, what was the haste? What was the urgency the statute requires to make that amendment before it could even be laid in this House? It's not the first one that's been made without being laid, I grant you that. But it is the one made, I believe, in the shortest timescale with the most obvious political ramifications. So, many questions. Could I come to an issue, Mr. Principal Deputy?